without further ado, I think most people know who I am, but I will just say it anyway. So my name is Varvara Keidan Shavrova, and I am one of the two artists showing in this exhibition entitled Haptic Codes, with the other artist, Susan Stockwell. We're both associated with Patrick Heide Gallery for a while. Both of us have shown with the gallery for more than 10 years. And we have collaborated, or we've shown together in a number of group exhibitions, but this is the first two-woman show, so it's a particular dynamic. And we agreed that it's more of a dialogue it's more of a conversation than two solo shows that happen under the same roof in the same building. The dialogue started a long time ago because, as I say, I have included Sue's work in exhibitions that I have curated in York Museum and that later traveled to the Virginia Commonwealth University in Qatar. And we have participated in a number of group exhibitions in the gallery. However, we're never really engaged in direct dialogue. And what not a better opportunity to do so than being stuck in different countries during the lockdown. So both myself and Sue were working in our studios. I was just saying that in Ireland, where I lived at the time, the lockdown was very strict, so you couldn't actually leave your house and walk or travel beyond 2 kilometers, so it was very limited. My studio happened to be 14 kilometers away, so I was kind of going quietly mad, and because I couldn't work. And Sue's situation was a bit better. She could go to her studio, but of course, like every artist, when the pandemic started, we all felt, okay, this is the end, we will never exhibit again, there's no point in making work, but also all paid work ceased and all opportunities to exhibit stopped, and we didn't know whether it will restart or not. So we decided that we'll start talking about something that will be something to look forward to in the future. And so we started talking about an idea of a two-person exhibition where the dialogue will start from our personal dialogue, but then it will continue in the works. So we never obviously attempted to as it were, collaborate. So we decided we will work on this idea of a conversation and we will continue talking. Very early on we thought about what the title might be, and we thought it has to do something with touch, with the possibility to experience the works closely, with all those things that we couldn't do when we were endlessly watching yet another online presentation or yet another talk. So it's like really getting quite upsetting to be able to only experience the work online, not being able to see anything in the galleries, obviously not knowing when the galleries will reopen and so on. So hence the idea of haptic codes was born. So it was going to be something that's tactile, but also appeal and describe, I suppose, not only our methodologies, which were haptic. We both work with materials that are, you can say, belong to woman's world, or woman's work. We work with thread, we work with stitching, we work with the processes of embroidery, cutting, and then also we work on a kind of cross-border between making tactile objects, which are also installations. So there's this kind of duality of the haptic, and then codes. The codes came from the idea that the first computer prototype being born from the research and the activities of Ada Lovelace, who was the daughter of Byron, and also, sort of inadvertently, the inventor of the first computer code. So this piece is called Chinese Dream 2. Not as in 2, T-O-O, but number 2. and I will give a little bit of a story behind it. So Susan started working on this when she was living in China. She was doing a residency there about 15 years ago. And then she was commissioned by V&A to make a quilt, because they had an exhibition of quilts, and so it was one of the works that she did for it. So Chinese Dream 1 was collected by the V&A and was different from this because it didn't have the red border, and it also didn't have the red running stitch. The actual background of the quilt was the same in Chinese Dream 1 and Chinese Dream 2. And as you can see, there are three types of currencies in here. So the smallest one is four. So it's 1 and 5. So Wu Jiao is 5 Jiao, and then this one is Yi Yuan. Yeah, so it's Yi-Kuai. So 1 renminbi. Then there is Shi Kuai, so it's 10 renminbi, and then Yi-Bai. This is 100. So 4 different currencies. The reason she was particularly interested in the Jiao and the old single yuan is because these are the money that they're no longer in the Chinese circulation. The reason being is because actually they represent too many ethnic minorities for somebody's liking. It's much better to have just one man on the money than all of these people. So this is a rarity, this is a rare currency per se. Then also, I guess, when she was looking at the color, this is of course much more earthy and sort of has the relative representation of the actual land masses, so red for Australia and sort of more brown for Eurasia, Africa and India. And then the 10 yuan is like the sea mass, so kind of correlates with the actual real geography. But then also, as many of the other pieces by Susan, they represent this sort of geopolitical values of mapping. So, and lastly, I suppose, just the pieces here, they are continuation from these drones, but done in a slightly different methodology. So that was 3 pieces made in collaboration with La Bevilacqua, which is the oldest remaining factory or manufacturing in Venice that still makes velvet. And their clients include like the Queen and Moscow Kremlin, which I'm sure is no longer a client. But they make these amazing historic but also contemporary designs in velvet, and the looms are 18th century and they still work. It's wooden, beautiful. So I collaborated with them, and the process you can see kind of directly. So this is the first object, if you like, so it's the first drawn, which is embroidered by hand. Then I work on the computer, so I sort of reproduce that drawing. Then I send it to them. Then they put it into the old. So this is back to Ada Lovelace and the punch card, because the looms obviously are not computerized. So they have to create the punch cards and create the hand loom pattern. Then it's obviously loomed through, and then I receive the pieces, and then I embroider them, and it's machine embroidered. And that's the work that I've been doing in the RCA as part of my PhD research. So here is like the triple image of a drone, so it's almost reflection of itself in itself. And I guess that I kind of have some kind of correspondence with other artists as well, who have worked with the idea of drones and the threat from above. Like James Bridle, he makes us drawings of a shadow of a drone on the ground, and I think I was kind of thinking about that. Even if we think about sci-fi movies, there's always this kind of threat that comes from the sky, from above, whether it's man-eating monsters or another incredibly oversized flying object, but it's always there's something coming from the sky. So this idea of dream worlds of flight, which I have been, I suppose, obsessed with since my master's dissertation in Goldsmith, and I kind of carrying this through in my PhD research, now is extended more into today. So rather than talking about historic flight, an obsession with conquering the skies, as it were, the title now is Dream Worlds of Flight in the Age of Surveillance Capitalism. So I'm bringing it into right into the context of surveillance and what flight and flying objects mean in the context of surveillance, but also sort of suggesting that surveillance doesn't always come from the sky anymore, that it comes from our phones and our computers, and data harvesting is as much a process of gathering information as is surveying the land and the people from above. And that's what where I'm heading, so it's like going to take the next 3 years to figure out. And then just one more thing, this piece wasn't here last week, I just brought it over. This is entitled Tatlin's Drone, and it's embroidery on the wall, made into a cushion. The subtitle is Dream Maker, and I made it for an exhibition of the group exhibition of artists from Ukraine and Russia, or former Soviet Union. And obviously it's got kind of Ukrainian colors, so the ideas, I think you can sort of read what it is, because the dream of flight, but also the dream and the sleeping process. And my first conversations with people when this war started was that nobody was sleeping at all, just didn't sleep. Whether they were in Kiev or somewhere else in Ukraine or in Moscow, so the horror that keeps you away, and even the nightmares don't happen because you don't sleep. So that's a kind of comment on that. And lastly, the piece in the fireplace. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but it's a 6-minute animation, and it kind of segues really the connection to historic aviation and my previous work that relates to the amphibious plane designed by my great uncle, which was shown in this gallery also in 2019. And this story has been kind of obviously the basis of the work, which was a large, multi-objected carpet. It kind of puts it into a very specific historic and family context. And it was designed in collaboration, that's the flying carpet, thank you, David. It puts it in a very specific historic context, and I made it, in fact I think I'm going to pause it so you can maybe populate it. I made it in collaboration with an animator based in Berlin, and this body of work, when I showed it in Goldsmith and then here, the names were appropriated, so they were not the real names of my family members. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. And just to finish, I picked a quote from the book, which is called Zeros Plus Ones by Sadie Plant, and it opens up with her sort of interpretation of the story of Ada Lovelace, the unstoppable woman. And here is the quote by somebody talking about her. William Gibson and Bruce Sterling, The Difference Engine. A strong-minded woman, much like her mother, wears green spectacles and writes learned books. She wants to upset the universe and play dice with the hemispheres. Women never know where to stop. So I will finish on that. There we go. And if you have any questions, ask me now. Or if you don't, that's fine too.
So how big is